Hello, thank you all very much for joining us this evening. My name's Emma, I'm the Marketing Campaigns Lead at the Rivers Trust. For those of you that aren't maybe familiar with the Rivers Trust, we're a conservation charity and our mission is wild, healthy, natural rivers valued by all. We're the umbrella body sort of representing or supporting nearly 70 local rivers trusts, and we take a science-led, solutions-focused approach to river restoration. This event is part of a series that we're running this week of free events. It's part of our Big Give campaign. So during the Big Give, charitable donations made are match funded, so they're doubled, which means that although we recognise, times are tough and we want to run a series of free, accessible events for everyone, if you were interested in supporting the work that we do, now's a fantastic time because you can support us with an amount that gets match funded and doubled, allowing us to have twice the impact on our work. So all of those donations are used to support rivers at the local, regional and national scale. My lovely colleague Becca will pop a link into the chat now, just in case you consider it at any point during this event. Please also do use the Q&A function to add any questions for Will and Jack. We'll have a session at the end where they can answer them. And it's my absolute pleasure tonight to introduce the two of you that we're going to be hearing from. So this promises to be a fascinating chat about all things angling, conservation, and where the two of them intersect. Will Millard is going to be our host tonight. He's an angler, author, television presenter, and he wrote his book, The Old Man and the Sand Eel, about trying to break a new British fishing record. Wow, who knew that was a tongue twister? He's also presented several series on rivers and fishing for the BBC. He's even lived with tribal people in the remote South Pacific for his award-winning series, My Year with the Tribe and Hunters of the South Seas. He's also an ambassador for the Angling Trust and for the World Fish Migration Day. Will is going to be chatting with Jack Perks, who is one of our ambassadors here at the Rivers Trust. He's a professional wildlife cameraman. He's obsessed, in his own words, with freshwater and its inhabitants. Over the past 10 years, he's worked all across the UK, filming every species of freshwater fish. He's written multiple books, magazine articles, and filmed for all sorts of TV series, including Wild Isles, Springwatch, Country File. We're absolutely delighted to have him as an ambassador. So if the two of you would like to join us, we'll let the evening commence.
Hello.
How are we
doing? Good. Wonderful. Jack, I'm very disappointed your beard is quite small at the moment. It's supposed to be this long Gandalf-esque luxuriant number. What's the story there?
I wanted to see what my chin looked like because I haven't seen it for about 4 or 5 years. So I shaved my beard off, and then my wife was horrified and has forced me to grow my beard back. So I'm just sort of kind of putting Miracle Grow and gravy on it just to get it going. It'll get there back. It'll get going.
Wonderful. I'm so looking forward to this tonight, Jack. We have met in person before, but it's such a treat to be able to talk to you about your work. I'm gonna let's start where it all started. So, when little Jack Perks was running around Nottingham, was that where you're from originally, isn't it?
Yeah. So, born and bred in Notts. I've always had it's cliche to say, isn't it? But always had an interest in wildlife and nature and things like that. And I've always been attracted to the less obvious stuff. So rather than, I don't get me wrong, I like birds and mammals and stuff like that. They are interesting, but it's always been reptiles and insects and fish that have kind of caught my interest. So I grew up on a council estate in South Notts, and there was a little brook, a river, Fairham Brook, and that's where I kind of grew up on. And it was minnows, bullheads, and sticklebacks, and all that sort of stuff. And if you were really lucky, you might see a chub or something a bit. They look like leviathans back then. So like a little kid, like a chub was a submarine going by. But that's where it all kind of started for me on small rivers in the East Midlands, and just getting lost and looking at them.
Was there a first memory or a first moment where you felt that kind of electricity and thought, yeah, this is for me, this is something that I would like to make into my career?
Yeah, I think it's funny you say that, actually. So yeah, my granddad used to manage a local football team, just like a kind of Sunday football team, and I've got no interest in football whatsoever. So he's not disappointed in me, but there's a little kind of a sigh every now and again. But or sports or anything, but I'd still go along and go see my granddad. And he would, in between the games, he would just take me for a walk along the river. And I remember it would have been maybe June or sometimes in the summer, and there's this beautiful kind of weeping willow. I must have been about 7 or 8, something like that. and underneath that willow there was this shoal of chub. Just I didn't fish at the time, but just remember seeing this shoal of chub and thinking that is incredible. Like these, they would have only been like 2 or 3 pounds. They weren't monsters, but to a kid in a small river, they look just enormous. And that memory always sticks out on me. Actually, like my first fish I ever caught was a chub. Weirdly enough.
Really?
Yeah. Everyone said, "What was your first fish, Will? What do you get?"
My first fish was a skimmer bream, which was weird.
Oh, really? That's a weird one as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I grew up by water as well. There was a little creek that ran outside my house in the fens, and I learned to fish from the age of 4. My granddad taught me, and it was black with roach, back in the 80s, and yet somehow my sort of size 16 single maggot made it into the lips of this little skimmer bream, and I didn't catch too many after that either. But it was amazing, and I think for me, as a young angler, I just couldn't believe that this fairly sort of rudimentary tackle, the old Argus introduction to fishing kit, which was a metallic rod, for me, it was like a magic wand. It could make this incredible connection with this unseen world that up until that point, I virtually knew nothing about. And to be able to hold that creature in my hand and take that moment with it was amazing. And that certainly changed my life as an angler.
I think that's one of the things with angling, isn't it? It's connecting the dots between what's beneath and what's above, and it's accessible for, obviously, like I'll probably take it to the extreme a little bit, bobbing around in rivers, but anyone can take a fishing rod and they cast it out and they can get a little glimpse into what's beneath the water. And and like you say, there's those surprises. You think you know what's in there, but you never know. Something a little bit different could turn up and surprise you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, without getting too heavy too early on, I mean, I think that one of the major problems at the moment is access, for young people to have the kind of experiences that you and me have just described. It can be a lot more challenging today, can't it?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's tricky, isn't it? Because I get it. I've been fishing since I was 11, and fishermen and fishing clubs don't necessarily own it, but often have the rights to so many riverbanks and lakes and whatnot, and you don't want it to be spoiled, and it can be easy to kind of safeguard it. But at the same time, I kind of lean towards the school of thought that the more voices we have protecting it, the better. And I think angling on the whole is stronger if we work with other groups. You might not see eye to eye on everything, and I think it's very rare in life we do see eye to eye on everything. But whether we can work together with other organised, whether it's kayaking or swimmers or bird watchers or whoever it is, to all kind of stamp out together, we're allowed a voice together, is how I generally see it.
I totally agree. I mean, we're jumping forward a little bit in the chat here, but I do think there's a common misconception of anglers that we're all kind of grumpy old men that don't want to engage with other people that are using the water in the different ways that they are. I do think that angling, by the stereotypical nature of the sport, if you look at an angler, it looks quite isolated.
Yeah.
But, I'm all for it, especially reaching across the divide. And there's been some amazing work, since we've entered this rivers crisis that I'm sure we're going to get on to talking about today. There's been some amazing work reaching across that divide and pulling in people that engage in rivers in different ways. Wild swimmers, surfers against sewage have been massive as well. And then within our angling community, we've got ambassadors like Feargal Sharkey, who's, obviously ex-lead singer of the Undertones, has come into the game and has completely changed it and has done great work alongside, your Bob Mortimers and your Paul Whitehouses in bringing fishing to the masses, but also saying, do you know what, we are more approachable than you probably think, and we care deeply about rivers especially, and everything that swims in it. It's not just because we wouldn't have a sport without fish, but because we're passionate environmentalists.
I think it's interesting you mentioned the Whitehouse and Mortimer series, because I think that has in many ways really helped the perception of angling, because it's always been tranquil and nice and whatnot. But I think what I noticed with that series is so many people watched it and then who don't go fishing, they just watch it because, like, my wife is not if I ever suggest going fishing, she just leaves the room, but we're rewatching it at the moment. I think we're on season 5 or something. But she loves it. She wants to watch it. She just enjoys, like, I think it's the friendship aspect of it. The kind of she describes it as hugger. You know, is it the Danes? Is that the hugger?
Yeah.
It's very hugger. It's very cozy.
Is that how you pronounce it? I thought it was higger.
Oh, maybe. I mean, I'm not Danish. Isn't my first language, so
you rarely hear come in public. It's always in books, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, something like that.
Right. It is like that, and it's deeply meditative, and it is a good laugh when you're fishing with other people. It gets you out of the house, and I think as well, you know, I think there's been a lot of studies recently, and very recently there's been studies about the mental health benefits of being in blue spaces in particular, and in fact that actually across the board it seems that the most beneficial places to be are blue spaces, even over some green spaces, with apparently coastal areas coming out on top, like apparently being by the coast is the most beneficial place to be for your mental health, especially if you can somehow live there, which I appreciate not all of us can do. But what was your
landlocked where I am?
yeah. Are you still in the middle of the country?
I am. Yeah, I'm in middle of Knot. So I think it's 70 miles from Skegness is the nearest coastline. Which nothing against Skegness, but you know that's the closest. And then the other way is maybe North Wales. I think is the other side. So yeah, I'm pretty much bang in the middle.
Bang in the middle. But you've got the River Trent.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, we've got some cracking fishing and fish and stuff, so I can't grumble. But yeah, I'm fairly close to Collingham, which is like the kind of mecca of barbel fishing. That's only down the road from me, so I can't grumble.
Did you manage to get out this season on the barbel?
You know what? No, to my shame, and I know like people would give their right arm to do it. No, I haven't really. It's been quite a busy year. I'm not doing a shameless plug here, but I am writing a book on fish at the moment, so that's been keeping me busy, which is a field guide to marine and freshwater. So actually this year I've been doing a lot of marine stuff, which is all new to me, which I've absolutely loved. So I've been kind of going up and down the country to the coast to photograph lots of marine fish. So I've not had a lot of time for the Trent, but I might sneak a session in before Christmas maybe.
Actually, Jack, whilst we're shamelessly plugging your work, that I watched your YouTube chasing scales today with you.
Oh, did you? Oh, thanks.
Yeah. No, I'm a subscriber. Everyone should subscribe. It's great. And it's got a really lovely pace to it. But I saw a fish species that I'd never heard of, let alone see. Was it a black-mouthed dogfish? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. It
was amazing. So was that part of your work for this book that you?
So basically, yeah. So because I had to go around and photograph these fish, I thought, how can I capitalize on this? And I thought, well, I'll make some videos of me doing it as well. So that was that's what that was for. Yes, so I photographed the dogfish and did it. But they're all on YouTube. You don't have to pay to watch them. They're all out there. But I think I've filmed about 20 of them. So they're just trickling out each week, and until I collapse, I'll keep doing them, I think.
Amazing. So do you have a favorite angling moment?
Oh wow. That's really, because everyone always asks me about wildlife, but I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. Favorite angling moment. I tell you what, one that stands out to me, which it's not actually a favorite, but it stands out, and it's actually losing a big fish, which was I hooked a massive eel on the Trent years ago. I don't know, I must have only been about, late teens maybe. I was with a friend and we were pike fishing, and I thought it was just a big pike, and then got it to the top and it looked like an anaconda. It's absolutely enormous. And I mean, everything looks bigger in hindsight, but just trying to get it to the net, and it pinged off, and I was gutted. I mean, I still remember it now, and it's like 10 years later, but that was the one that got away, and that really stands out to me. It must have been a massive eel. I don't know, on its way back to sea probably. So I was bothering it on its way to the Sargasso, but it was a monster. What about you? You must have one that stands out.
You know what? I mean, you've got me on one of my favourite topics. When I wrote the Old Man and the Sand Eel, I can remember.
Yeah, great book, by the way.
Oh, Jack, come on, mate, you're making me blush. when I got my my feedback from my editor for the chapter on eels, she said, "Will, I think your admiration from the eel has overtaken you somewhat." I was like, I grew up in the Fens, so I mean, we're surrounded by eels.
Yeah.
And I can remember as a lad, started fishing. So it'd be 1987 when I was, God, it feels a long time ago now, when I was 4, and then fished really hard until I left school at 18, just in my local area. And if you put a bait on the deck in the fens back then, you would catch an eel, guaranteed. Yeah. And then suddenly it felt to me like they just disappeared overnight. I went through a period at sort of university where I didn't fish that much. And then I was away. I started traveling a lot in Indonesia. My career went off in that direction. And then when I came home and started fishing again, I didn't catch an eel for a long time. And of course, their numbers now have crashed by 95%. And like so many of our great traveling fish species, the great nomadic species such as, sea lamprey, which I know you've got extraordinary footage of in your film that we're definitely going to be talking about later on. And salmon, of course, sea trout, they're the canaries in the coal mine. They're the fish species that get affected probably the worst and the first when it comes to problems in our rivers, because of course they're traveling the length and breadth of a river quite often, and they're coming in from the sea as well. So yeah, it's a great sadness to me that there aren't as many eels around as there used to be. But I have caught a few since, and actually one of my favorite fishing stories was catching a giant eel, sorry Jack, and landing it as a kid.
Oh, good. As long as you got it. Could have been the same one.
I was with my granddad down the fens fishing. Was it the middle level drain or Popham Zoo, somewhere down there? They all look the same, right? And just remember hooking into this thing. And of course, eels can swim just as hard forward as they can back. So they're real. It's a unique sort of serpentine fight. When you've got them on, steady backwards pull, and eventually managed to get this fish into the net. Great fish, huge eyes, dark, and it's as thick as my arm. I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen an eel so big.
Yeah.
It was the sort of only fish that I'd caught prior to going into that sort of record challenging book that kind of was what I was calling at the time a John Wilson mega specimen. I was obsessed with John Wilson and had his encyclopedia to big fish, and he had are you going to reach down and pick it up? Oh mate, well I'm glad you've done that, Jack, because guess what I've got resting up this laptop right now. There's mine.
Yeah. Mine's a bit battered, but yeah. So when I read your book, I read that you said, and I thought that can't be the same book. But yeah, this is like the Bible. It's a fantastic book. It's great,
absolutely brilliant. So let's move on. I mean, I think it'd be really let's talk about how you first became involved in the Rivers Trust and why this great organisation is so important. You're an ambassador of the Rivers Trust, and it'd be great to hear a little bit more about their work, Jack, given what we're here for today.
Yeah, so I mean, a bit like Emma mentioned at the beginning, but the Rivers Trust that we're dealing with today is an umbrella organisation, and then every kind of, it's not necessarily county, but almost catchment will have a Rivers Trust, and they're kind of, I like to see them a bit kind of like a grassroots organisation, so they're getting their wellies muddy and getting in there. So when I think of the Rivers Trust, I typically think of like re-merandering rivers. Try to say that 4 times in a row, or removing weirs. So they're generally quite a practical charity, which I think is a good thing. It's nice, I think it's good to talk, but it's actually good to get in there and crack on with it. So the Rivers Trust on the whole, there's massive variety between all of them. I mean, you've got like the Sevens Rivers Trust, which is multi-million pounds, removing barriers for migratory shad and salmon and whatever, all the way down to kind of much smaller Rivers Trust, which are just kind of doing more local based things. So I think they're a great organisation on that basis, that they kind of get their wellies mucky and help the whole ecosystem, not just fish. I mean, a proxy of it is that they help fish as well, but they're a brilliant organisation for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you're tuning in today, then please do give, as Emma mentioned at the start, it makes such a difference this week in particular, because those funds are doubled effectively. So let's just take another step back into your work. The last time I saw you was at the premiere of Britain's Hidden Fishes, which is, I mean, I'll say it for you, it's an absolute masterpiece. What you achieved with that film. For those of you that aren't aware, Jack has made the most incredible sort of native British fish species documentary with all of his underwater camera work. I saw it in its premiere in a cinema in Bristol, and given the budget that you were working on, it was all crowdfunded. It was stupendous. I mean, it could easily have gone on 9 p.m. BBC Two in a blue chip slot. It's absolutely incredible. So, I mean, what was the thinking behind that? When did you decide that I'm gonna go to this level, and what was the kind of inspiration for pulling all of your life's work, I think it's fair to say, into this one remarkable piece of film?
Yeah, that's very kind of you. I apologise if you can hear my dogs keep barking. They're a pain if they are turning out. So it's very kind of you. Basically, because I've been trying to get a film on fish on the telly for years and years and years, and native fish are just not shown very often. Or salmon get a lot of attention, which is fine. Salmon are great, don't get me wrong. But I thought, well, I want to try and do something that showcases British fish in a natural history setting. So, although we got Jeremy Ray to narrate it, the guy from River Monsters, I'm sure many people will know, it's not actually an angling film. It's purely just a kind of natural history film. And I'd been pitching this sort of idea to TV for years, and people were kind of lukewarm at best. And I thought, well, sod it, I'll do it myself then. And that kind of thinking, that can't be that hard. And it was a lot harder than I thought, but really rewarding in the end, because getting lots of lovely feedback like from yourself, which was lovely. So I've actually got a screening tomorrow in Newcastle, funny enough, and then I think there's one at Chatsworth, and that's about it. But we're talking to Channel 5 at the moment, and they're kind of umming and ahhing about getting it on the telly with a little bit of luck. But it's just an idea to get a natural history based film showcasing British fish, which I don't think's been done before. I might be wrong.
I don't think so either. I mean, as you say, they feature in series like Wild Isles, but not fully focused on it, and certainly not in the way that you did in capturing so much behaviour. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so hard to get away films that focus on fish?
I think they're not easy to film for a start. So, like with something like a fox or a bird of prey or whatever, you can set up a hide and you can just wait all day for them to do something. But you can't sit in a river all day practically. It gets cold and wet. So you've only got a limited time in the water with them, and even then, the conditions aren't always good. So the reason it took 3 years to film was because one year it might have rained really heavily, so we couldn't film in the river because it's murky, or another year the fish maybe didn't quite do it as we'd hoped. So they're a very difficult subject to film, and they're not seen as being as, say, glitzy as other species. I mean, I suppose me and you were preaching to the converted. We think fish are fantastic, but I've noticed whenever you try and get fish on wildlife programs, it's just got to be that level up. It can't just be an interesting behavior. It's got to be a really interesting behavior. So I think, was it Planet Earth? I want to say Planet Earth 2 with the Jack Trevally eating birds. There was one of the blue, I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah.
But like, it's stuff like that. You have to go next level with fish. Otherwise, I mean, like, I think Planet Earth 3, the freshwater episode, was out maybe last week. I think there was only one fish story in it, one freshwater fish, which is mad when you think about it. I'm not going to start slagging off Planet Earth 3 because I'd like to work again, but yeah, I think there was only one fish story in the freshwater.
It's hard enough as it is, Jack, without taking aim at the commissioners. But I totally understand, and I've been in the same boat, so to speak, many times in my career as well.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky that I have been able to make a fishing series. But
that was the Welsh one, was it? Fishing in Wales or something?
But prior to that, whenever we were making, we made a series from source to sea down the River Taff. Why? And they did really, really well, a series, but the fish or the fishing could only ever be a bit part in that journey. It couldn't be something we could focus solely on, which it's kind of tough. I remember a commissioner saying, scales don't rate at one point, and that was looping back to Mortimer and Whitehouse. It's really nice to be able to kind of see, okay, well, and Jeremy Wade as well. I mean, Jeremy's an amazing. We both have worked with Jeremy, and he's an amazing guy, you know, and he's done so much as well, you know, for popularizing fishing and fish to the masses. But yeah, it's still a hard sell, even when you've got these phenomenally successful series that you can say, well, what about this? Getting back to your film though, I mean, were there any kind of standout moments where you were like, oh my goodness me, that was so hard to do, but I got it in the end?
I think what stands out? I mean, there's a bit with lamprey where we've got like hundreds of river lamprey, and essentially that was on the Welsh Dee actually, and the guy what's the group? No, Natural Resource Wales. It's like your environment agency, isn't it? Like the
was it the Welsh? I was it the Welsh Dee, the Dee Life Project? Joel.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's it. You got it. So they basically said, look, we think it's going to be a good year if you ought to get over it if you can. And I kind of kept it on the back burner. And then they sent one of them just filmed something on their phone, and it looked crazy. I thought, God, I've got to go there. So that's 2.5 hours from where so it's not exactly, you know, close, but shot it down there, just prayed that they were still going for it. And then the riverbed was just littered with river lamprey. There must have been a couple hundred, and they'd never seen it like it before. I'd never seen anything like it before. And the nice thing with river lampreys, they're so kind of, well, all lamprey really, they're so preoccupied with what they're doing. You can get the camera right in. So they're a dream to work with. And I think that was 2020 we filmed that. And it's not been like that since. So it does make you realize that, if I just thought, I'll do it next year, or I'll go even next week, that opportunity would have been lost. So I'm so glad that I went and did it, because that could have been like a once in God knows how long opportunity. So I was chuffed for that. But they're amazing looking things, really weird.
Oh, extraordinary. You know, those sort of like circular plaid serrated mouths, they're something like out of a horror film, but actually they're amazing creatures. I can remember, and prehistoric as well, you know, I mean, they go back millions of years.
Yeah.
I can remember I was trotting, which is a fishing method for those of you guys watching that might wonder what that is. I was stood in the river with my waders on, running this float down the stream with my dad just by the cricket stadium, Sophia Gardens and the Taff, and 3 sea lamprey came swimming up, and one of them actually went between my legs, and they're big creatures.
They are big.
And when you see them in the flesh, you know you're looking at something prehistoric. They're just amazing. Yeah. Doing good work in the Dee, actually. I should shout out to my friends up in North Wales. Like the River Dee, it's looking like it's going to be a successful project, and you know it launched and then they had COVID, so it's all been a bit tricky. But yeah, they brought down a weir, and they've done some good sort of they've done some really good sort of community.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, so they've done some great stuff.
He's a good guy, Joel, that's running the project. So all power to them. But what about Mrs. Jack? I mean, you know, you've got this crowdfunded project. You've got a very, very tight budget, shall we say, and you've got to take a punt, haven't you? I mean, they're wild fish, as you say.
Yeah.
Was there anything where you were like, oh, you know, that fish was the bane of my existence?
The one that kind of we tried was basking sharks, and you know, I love. I know I'm a big advocate of the small stuff, and you know, gudgeon and rough and things like that. But then at the end of the day, basking sharks are as big as a bus. You know, it's an incredible thing that we have in the UK. From I used to live in Cornwall when I went to uni, so very rarely they turn up there, and they're more kind of the Hebrides now for, I think, plankton shift, and that's why you get them there. So we did try, went for a week around Col. And we didn't see one. It was gutting, because obviously the budget's tight and there was a bit of a risk. Like, well, we're going to just have to give it a go, and we didn't get any. So I was like, bugger, you know, what can you do? But it's just one of those things. Sometimes I think for every shoot that works, there's maybe like 3 that don't quite go to plan. So we had to be quite kind of tight and productive with it. But yeah, basking sharks were good. I am going to try and go to Mull next year, hopefully, and have another go for them, because I'd love to see one. I'd lose my mind if I saw one.
Me too. It's definitely one of those fish that I've just always wanted to see. I remember actually seeing there was a BBC series, I think it was called Wild Island.
Yes, I saw that. The guy on the
yes,
yeah.
Oh, I mean, watching that, having not seen one, you must just have been like, for goodness sakes. So basically, there's this the Irish presenter, I forget his name. He's in a brilliant voice, beautiful script. It's a wonderful program, and he's in a rowing boat off the west coast of Ireland, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
and that looks from the drone footage like there's just basking sharks everywhere. Amazing. I mean, talking of big fish, I mean, in our waters now, have you got any thoughts about possibly getting yourself out to the Celtic deeps or off the southwest? As you know, headlines are being made with bluefin tuna coming into our waterways now. That must be something that you might be thinking, you know, as a filmmaker, how could I capture something here? You know, there was a video of them hunting garfish in a harbour not too long ago, which was just extraordinary.
Mavagissy, I think, was some of that stuff. But yeah, no, I've tried again. Like, so yeah, the other one that I've sort of tried and failed is bluefin tuna. So yeah, I've tried a couple times, but the weather just keeps beating me. I think 3 times I've had to go now. But yeah, I mean, so it's a very rare success story that an animal that was relatively common around the UK up until the early 20th century, then due to overfishing and other issues was lost. And then in the last sort of 20 years, they kind of crept back to the point where, I don't know if you'd call them common, but certainly around certain parts of the UK, you can expect to see them, which is mad. And like bluefin tuna, some of them are as big as a car. They're enormous. They're absolutely enormous. So, I mean, yeah, I'd absolutely love to film them. And so again, it's just one of those things somewhere down the line. I've had a couple of goes. I'll certainly have another go next year, I think, because that would just be unreal. But yeah, I've been out in the Celtic deeps with basking shark. I think they're going to call Celtic Deep. There's a company that do blue shark trips, and they were like, yeah, if we're lucky, we might see some tuna, but we didn't on that occasion. But yeah, I would love to see them. Just to see one would be epic. It'd be incredible.
Yeah, I was very lucky in the couple of times that I've been out to the Celtic deeps that I saw them on both occasions. It was at distance, but
yeah,
I mean, just there, it's incredible. You know, like you say, you're seeing a car-sized fish leaping through the water. It's mind-blowing. You know, in British waters, to imagine that we've got those kinds of fish back and swimming around, and fingers crossed, relatively healthy population.
Yeah.
In all the time that you've been working in rivers, especially in the filming that you've been made, I mean, obviously you must have seen some pretty gnarly things as well, and pretty nasty things. How do you see? I mean, firstly, tell us about some of those things that you might have seen, and also, you know, what do you see as the kind of biggest threats to our rivers in 2023?
Yeah, it's quite sad, isn't it, in many ways? So I've been filming in rivers about 10 years now, I would say, and in that 10-year period, there's been a decline. Even in that relatively short time, I've noticed a decline in numbers of fish, aquatic plants, and often the clarity of water. And I always think like the holy grail for filmmaking is a clear river with lots of fish and lots of weed, like lots of ranunculus, lots of little minnows and other stuff hanging around, clear water. I really struggle to think of a river now in the UK where you've got all 3 of those things. You might find a river that's clear, but there's bugger all in it. There's nothing in there. And you might find a river that's got lots of fish, but the clarity is rubbish and there's no plants in it. So it seems like, you know, take your pick, whether it's agricultural pollution, sewage going into our rivers, all this plethora and cocktail of chemicals that are being dumped, really, aren't they? Dumped into our rivers are having a huge effect on it. And some fish can kind of persevere for it, but they're not thriving in it, are they? And it's one of those things that I think you mentioned Virgil Sharkey earlier, who are kind of banging the drum and rightly so about this, because people are getting kind of outraged over it. And so we should. This is an amazing natural resource, and we're sort of letting it, if you excuse the pun, go down the toilet, which isn't good.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree. I mean, and one of the only good things to have come out in you know recent times is the fury of the public has at least been captured over this issue, particularly sewage waste. But it's hard, isn't it? I mean, what have been some of the worst examples that you've actually witnessed?
So this is the interesting thing. So I used to snorkel loads in rivers. I used to love river snorkeling, but in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, I've really cut back on it. And it might sound dramatic, but almost because of a safety thing, because I don't want to be taken in. Some of these places, I mean, I live in, suburban area of the East Midlands. All these rivers are built up. They've all got large populations around them. I don't want to be swallowing that stuff in there. And like National Water Sports Centre is not too far from me. The amount of kayakers who they call it Trent Belly, which is a nice way of, I won't ruin everyone's dinner, but of just being really ill. And it's because of I can't remember, Fergal had the exact stat, but it's something just up from the National Water Sports Centre. There's an outfall and it's tons and hundreds of tons of raw sewage going into the river. So it's like, I don't want to gulp that down. So, I mean, I have seen some rivers where the bottom is just, covered in sewage fungus. And it just looks like this sort of furry grey blob and slobs on the bottom there. It just looks horrendous. The fish aren't happy. There's no plant life. The invertebrate life's really poor. It is just like it's a watery desert in many ways. It's horrible when you do see it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, I've seen it a lot myself. One of the worst things that I saw this summer, and it ended up getting picked up by the press, which was cool, but someone had just dumped a whole chemical toilet, contents of a chemical toilet, off a bridge in the Wye Valley.
All right.
My kids have been swimming just downstream of it, like literally just downstream of it, the pool downstream, like it was within view. In fact, I was paddling, looking for bullheads and stone loach, and looked up and just saw this like sort of white brown mass underneath the water surface, and it just turned out to be poo. And I was absolutely furious, as you can imagine. And I called it in, and NRW did send people down there and did do a cleanup. But I just couldn't believe it, that yes, obviously there's huge industrial pollution incidents and things that we're talking about in terms of, negligence from some landowners, but just to see that an individual who absolutely didn't need to do that has just done that, I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
How do we not lose heart, Jack? Like, give us some positive stories, and also what should we do as individuals? What can we do as individuals to try and do our bit to improve the environment, particularly rivers?
Yeah, so I think in terms of positive stuff, there is lots of positives going on. I think there are more people talking about it, and it's good that more people are talking about it. And the more we talk about it, the more the issue doesn't go away. So I think it's important that if you do see something going wrong, whether it's social media, whatever, just keep the conversation going. There are good things happening, like we mentioned, what the Rivers Trust are doing, whether it's rewilding rivers or habitat restoration or removing weirs, which are one of my pet hate. No one's really talking about weirs, but bloody hate the things, and it should all be blown up if we can. Things like that are all absolutely brilliant. In terms of what we can do as individuals, it's really tough, but there's two things I would say. I think firstly, don't let people put it back onto you. Like a lot of kind of water companies and things will say, well, don't use as much water, or be careful what you flush, which we should be mindful of that. But then that's trying to put the problem back on the consumer, when the problem's not the consumer, it's the infrastructure, is for one. And I think this question kind of came out when we had the Q&A at Britain's Hidden Fishes, and it basically boils down to, it's a political issue. Like, if you want change, you need to kind of let the people know in charge. And the politicians are only going to go where the majority go. You would like to think the majority of people don't like sewage in rivers. And I do think in the next election, that will be one of the key points for whoever, whichever, I'm trying not to get too political tonight, whichever side of the fence you want to go on. I think that's going to be a key point. And just whoever's got the better offer, if you're very keen on your rivers, then think about voting for them.
Yeah, I heard in a recent poll, after cost of living, pollution was the second issue. So it's a fact, and I understand. And there are organisations out there. I mean, I'm an ambassador for World Fish Migration Day that do a lot of dam removal work. I also work with Dam Removal Europe, which are amazing. But of course, the Angling Trust as well. I mean, their legal arm, Fish Legal, managed to take DEFRA to court. And won a historic legal case. So, it can be done, even though you feel like you're this kind of tiny person and that you're massively up against it. There are small victories that can end up being big wins. But I'm totally with you. And it annoys me when, the water companies say, well, it's going to impact your bills, especially when we've all seen the figures of how much money's been paid out in, whether it's dividends, bonuses, however
it's incredible.
It's absolutely boils my blood. But let's try and stay positive. Jack, I've got some quick fire questions for you.
Okay.
I thought, as we're getting towards the end of this, I thought let's put this man under a little bit of pressure here. So I am going to put you under pressure, I'm afraid. So these can't be long-winded answers, Jack.
Okay, all right, I'll do my best.
Give me the quickest answer you can. Okay, are you ready?
I think so.
Favourite fish?
Grayling.
Oh, very nice.
I keep meaning to think of it because I always get asked that. I keep thinking I should just say something different every time and just keep people guessing, but I can't help but say grayling.
I just remembered something from the tiny kind of sleep deprived brain that I seem to be. You have a viral clip of two grayling mating. That's right, isn't it?
I do. Yes. Yeah. That will haunt me. That will haunt me till my grave.
If you haven't ever seen that, then what would people search for in their little GIF?
I think you'd have to be careful what you type in, but it's just like grayling mating, and it should go. It's actually if you type fish into WhatsApp, it's the first thing that comes up.
Grayling mating. That's a good save for fish sex there, Jack. I could tell you. Favorite river?
Test. Love the Test. It's very nice.
Have you got a fish joke?
Oh, I read one earlier. What do you call a fish with no eyes?
Fish.
Yeah. That's terrible, isn't it? Yeah.
I love it. Any beard grooming tips out there, Jack?
Well, grow one for a start. Yeah. I'm not. I think at my height and my beard, I look like a full-blown hipster. But the reality is, it's just laziness. I just can't be asked to shave and had a big beard. So yeah, just keep the faith. It'll come.
Keep the faith, mate. I'm trying to keep the faith. Look at mine; it's terrible.
Can you grow a beard? Have you tried? Can you get a decent one going?
Obviously, I've got all of this past in expeditions, exploration, this TV adventure. I can't even grow a beard. It's so embarrassing.
Oh, that's no good. I can lend you some. I'm sure I'll have some spare.
Thanks, mate. Angling hero.
Oh, well, we both have got the John Wilson book, haven't we? It's got to be. He was just a legend when we were. I mean, I've grown up kind of early 90s. I think you're only a little bit older than me, aren't you? But it's he was just the man, wasn't he? John Wilson, just chuckling away, and the films were shot really nicely. He was just an absolute legend, wasn't he? He was brilliant.
I mean, I think one of the great things about John was that even as a little kid watching him growing up, he made you feel like you could catch something really special on your doorstep. And I think, going forward, that's one of the great things that I think that you do is that you inspire people to believe in what we have here in our island, and it makes you believe. And I think if you don't show people the wonders that are on our doorstep, then how can you make them care about saving them? I think it's so important. I am surprised, though, Jack, that you didn't go with Jeremy Wade after all of his...
I know, hopefully he's not watching this. That's our partnership over.
Favourite fish to catch as an angler?
Oh, I really like Zander. Because we've got a fair few Zander in the Trent and around me, and there's just something so people don't know what a Zander is. They're a non-native... which I guess I shouldn't really be promoting that much, but they're a non-native member of the perch family. And they just look weird. They look prehistoric. They have got two great big fangs at the front of their head. They're stripy. I mean, they're awesome looking things. And it's just always a little treat to get one. They generally naturalize. I mean, I wouldn't recommend people spreading them around, but where they are, they kind of slot into the ecosystem. But so have you ever caught a Zander? You gone after them?
I have. Not many. We didn't have any where I was growing up. But one of the things I would say, they're quite a difficult fish for a predator angler to isolate. I mean, what have you got any sort of tips for anybody that's watching that's fishing as to how you go about catching?
Oh God, I mean,
it's obviously you're going to throw a lure or a dead bait out there. It's picked up by a pike. If you want to get picked up by a perch, how do you specialize in your Zander?
Well, far be it from me to lecture anyone how to fish because I'm very much sort of chuck and hope. But from what the way I basically fish for Zander typically is relatively light, I don't use a wire trace, but I'll use very heavy line. So if I do get a pike, I'll get it in. I'll just have to change the line, just not much resistance. And I always use a small circle hook because they're quite prone to deep hooking. Obviously, we don't want to deep hook them. So with a circle hook, when you strike, it should, in theory, go in the scissors, and you can does less damage to the fish, and you get it out nice and quick. But that's not just a little, very small dead bait. I try and use a small dead bait as I can, because if you use a big one, a pike's going to snaffle it. But if I end up catching a 2-pound perch or a nice pike, it's not a bad day, so I don't mind too much.
I've never understood that with fishermen when they're like, "Oh, I can't believe it. I tried to catch this fish and I ended up catching this other fish." I'm like, dude, I've had so many days, weeks, probably years in total on the bank not catching anything. It's like,
yeah,
catch a fish. That's a miracle in itself.
Take the win.
Finally, Jack, and I can't believe we've not spoken about this already on the call, but as a fellow fish keeping enthusiast, what is your favourite fish to keep in a tank?
Yeah, I've been watching. Have you got like a big sucker fish or something in there? Is it a pleco? I can keep seeing it poking out.
A royal plec, yeah.
Yeah, it looks amazing. It looks a real beast. I might risk it. Can I? I'm not going to move my laptop because I don't want the connection to go. But yeah, just to my left here, I've got a big fish tank in my office with perch in it, with native perch, and they're in my opinion they're the best native fish to keep because they look interesting. You keep a few of them, and they kind of work you out. So whenever I'm working in my office, they'll watch me as I'm typing, and they watch my fingers. And I think we spoke about it before, but like they know when dinner time is. Like it gets to 5:30 when I feed them. They all come to the top of the tank to get fed. So they're quite intelligent little fish. But they'll obviously get to. I'll have to kind of move them outside when they get a bit bigger. But perch are amazing. I love keeping perch.
And you've got am I right in saying that you have got a flatfish, which we traditionally think of as a flounder? Is it a flounder? As a
flounder, yeah.
You've got that in a freshwater pond in your backyard.
Yeah, I've had it in there a couple of. Yeah, I mean, my garden's like a menagerie of weird stuff. But yeah, I've got a native fish pond. Well, I suppose you'd normally keep koi in it, but I've got just natives in it. And I caught a tiny flounder. It was like 50p, size of 50p. In the low reaches of a river, and I thought, I'll see if this survives in my pond, and they can survive in total fresh water, and it's now maybe I don't know that sort of size, and every now and again if I go out with a torch at night, I'll just see him rippling on the bottom. So I mean, eventually I'll chuck him back in the river so he can go down to sea, but they can live in ponds quite happily.
That's great. Wow, really interesting. So how many ponds and tanks have you got, Jack? I'm not even going to ask you how many fish you've got because
I wouldn't.
Not word to tell us.
I did have 6 ponds, but I've just gotten rid of 2 and extended 1. And then I've only got 1 fish tank because my wife's, she's very good in kind of indulging me, but she's like, the office, you can do what you like. The rest of the house is off limits. So I've only got a small office to put stuff. I was thinking about getting axolotls? Yes. A kind of salamandery looking thing. I was thinking about getting a tank, one of those in, but I could probably squeeze in a couple more tanks, couldn't I? I need to try harder.
Axolotls are cool creatures. My sister used to keep axolotls, and they live a long time, man.
Do they? I didn't know that.
Yeah, be prepared.
Yeah,
I've just got back into amphibians again, which was something that I thought I was never going to do, and I've just picked up a Pac-Man frog, Amazon frog, and I've just found out it's going to live for 10 years. In my 50s.
They're great. They're awesome looking things, aren't they?
Right, we've got about 10 minutes left, Jack, so I want to just get onto the chat box and see what we have from people. Oh, Emma's popped back into the chat. Hi, Emma.
Hello, I popped back in to help you out with the Q&A because actually we've got some questions for you as well, Will, so I thought I'd distribute them between you both. So, oh my gosh, thank you both so much for that. I completely lost track of time. I know very little about fishing beyond the fact that my grandfather absolutely loves it. And just seeing the two of you feeding off of each other and just, sharing those really cute stories about like remembering the first fish that you'd ever caught, it completely just took me away and suddenly made me think, maybe I need to get a new hobby. But one of the things that I appreciated was actually both of you raising some of the issues about the pressures that our rivers are facing. Thanks, Jack, particularly bringing up things like sewage, agricultural runoff, chemicals, all of these really, really awful, huge pressures that are really making our rivers suffer. So my question to both of you was, climate change is another one of those things that's driving a lot of pressure on our rivers. So when you're looking at the climate, what are your biggest concerns regarding our native fish through that kind of lens?
Yeah, one of the things that I've really noticed is how few mackerel there are around at the moment. In the summertime, we used to be able to get so many, and just offshore, you would stick 6 hooks on, cast it out. Sometimes I remember times where you catch so many, you'd literally just put out one hook basically, because you just have a couple for tea and you're done. I haven't caught one this year, and I know that they are pushing off the coast and they're moving further north because the sea's warming. Also, we're seeing here in Wales, there's more triggerfish, which is weird, off Mumbles Pier in particular, up near Gower. So that's a big thing. And yeah, probably more than anything, it's always the smallest things, isn't it? So invertebrate ecology has certainly been affected. That's the thing that's been affected the most. And then of course just your most obvious stuff, which is that when it's dry, rivers and ponds dry up, and that is having a devastating impact on so much life. I'd encourage anybody watching, please do. You don't need to take it to Jack's level, but please do put a pond in your back garden. You don't need to put fish in it. Just put some water in your back garden and you'll do so much good for the birds and the bees that will go there to drink, and it will naturally become populated with all kinds of wonderful wildlife.
Yeah. Agree with all that. The other thing with climate change for me that stands out is salmon. So salmon in the south of England are on their temperature barrier. About, I think once it gets above 22 degrees, something like that, salmon just die. They can't hack it. And most of our southern rivers in the summer now, height of summer, are kind of getting to that level. And there's a very real risk that if we don't do something, we're going to lose salmon in certainly southern England, and as climate continues. And there are ways that we can lower the temperature of rivers, whether it's planting more trees to create shade and things like that. There's habitat restoration and all that jazz. But yeah, it's salmon have already got the plethora of problems as it is. But yeah, certainly in the southern part of their range, there's a very, very real risk we'll lose them if it carries on.
We're seeing that here too, Jack. I was speaking to a fisheries scientist about the critical temperature of egg fertilization in salmon, and he said a couple of seasons ago here in my area it tipped over that, which is usually kind of during the cooler months.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, it would have almost certainly wiped out that entire breeding population, which is devastating news.
Yeah.
Especially in rivers where salmon have recovered to a degree. It's really sad to hear that they're suffering in that way again.
Yeah, definitely.
Great answers both. Yeah, one of the things that we do at the Rivers Trust is work with a lot of riparian tree planting programs, and partly the benefit of that is it helps to purify water. It helps slow the flow of water off land into rivers, helps reduce the amount of sediment getting in, changing the habitat within the river, but also, particularly that creates shade, which is such a vital thing that we are going to be concerned about in the coming years, particularly when we're reaching kind of extreme summer temperatures for prolonged periods that we've not seen before. So that's one of the things that if you were to donate to the Rivers Trust, like my seamless link here, that's the sort of thing that we're trying to work a lot harder on, and trying to sort of future-proof our rivers. We're looking towards all of the stresses that are going to increase, and we know are increasing as our temperatures are increasing. Taking it back to fishing, a question that I don't fully understand, but I'm sure you will. Quiver tip or swing tip? Jack, I'll ask you first.
I think I've only ever a quiver. Well, I'll go get this right now. I'm going to sing like I don't know what I'm talking about. A quiver tip's like a really kind of bright, bendy bit of the rod, the end of the rod, really sensitive. And a swing tip is, I think, is it another thing? Will might know more than. Is it like there's another thing on the end of the line? Is that a swing
Jack,
tip?
mate, you're making me feel old now. We used to swing tip all the time when I was kids. So like a little tip that you screw into the end of the rod and it flops down like that with an extra.
That's right.
Effectively, a swing tip, the bite indication's like this, whoop, and then with a quiver tip, it's going to be something.
Yeah, I think I've only quiver tip, so that would be mine. But yeah, I did know it was something like that, but I've never done it.
Do you know what? Back in the day, quiver tipping on the big drains for bream was the way forwards, and that's what we used to use. Whereas today, because it's seen so archaic and arcane, basically the people I've spoken to that have that have picked up the sort of more modern swing tip rods. They say that the quality's not there. I don't know. I've still got one in the shed, but yeah.
Oh, nice. We've only got a couple more minutes.
Unexpected, that one. Unexpected. Yeah.
If you're both happy to stick around for another 5 minutes, we've got some really lovely questions coming in the chat, if you don't mind. The first one, we're going to jump back off of the pond debates. Jack, on a personal level, you've very much helped me with my own pond creation, and hopefully now you can help Reese, who's asked, he's going to be making a wildlife pond for his son. What's a good depth for him to be aiming for, ideally, if he's going to stock it with native fish?
With fish, okay. So, because generally for a wildlife pond doesn't have to be that deep. However, if you are going to put fish in it, then you will want a deeper bit for them to retreat to, but also to keep a more stable temperature. As you know, funny as we were talking about that earlier. So, if you can, like 3 or 4 foot is ideal. If you can go more, even that would be ideal. Or part of the pond. The cheating way to do it, which I did, is raise the pond as well. So if you can't dig down 4 foot, go up 4 foot, or go down 2 foot, come up 2 foot. So there's always ways around it. So yeah, I would say at least 3 or 4 foot. You want a good body of water to hold that temperature in the summer. And if you can avoid putting it anywhere with direct sunlight all day, just a little bit of shade somewhere, that'll help the pond as well.
I think raising it up is a good idea as well if you've got young children around.
Yes,
got a little bit of a barrier there. I put sort of nets and cages and all sorts over mine to stop my kids from going in. But yeah, if you can raise them up, then obviously you can. They've got something to climb before they get into the pot.
That's an excellent consideration. Yep, hadn't thought about that one. Although I'm sure providing them with something to climb might entice some children. Will, next one for you then. What's the most important thing you reckon that a casual angler might be able to do in order to look after our rivers? Any advice?
Yeah, well, actually, we should have said this earlier. One of the other things that the Angling Trust have been doing is they're sponsoring, in England, I should say, clubs to have water testing kits. I think that's brilliant. I can't understand why it's not been done already. You know, one of the problems is that we see a pollution incident, we ring it into the pollution hotline, and quite often by the time someone's got down there, it's passed by. It'd be great to be able to get a specimen and to get it tested straight away. So, I mean, if we can finally move to a place where we've all got kits in our bags, that'd be brilliant. But yeah, I mean, I think, look, we've all got these now. You know, these devices are brilliant. You know, use your phone, make a record, take a photo, take a film, post it on social media. Don't just, you know, see it with your eyes and complain. Make sure that you're calling these things in. Look in the margins of where you're fishing. Look for obvious signs, like if you can see any dead fish or even just struggling fish. Get in contact with your club or whoever owns that stretch of water and make sure that you're definitely doing your bit. You know, I think it's really, really important. You know, as anglers, you know, we pay our rod license fee. If you're members of clubs, you're paying for club books and things, and you know, so much of that money gets reinvested into the habitat, which does brilliant work, but there's always more that you can do as an angler as well. Pick litter as well. I mean, it drives me mad. Like if you go into a swim and there's litter there, as far as I'm concerned, it's your responsibility to pick that up, especially if it's discarded line, you know, hooks. We've got enough problems as it is, you know, as anglers, without people being ignorant and leaving their tackle just like willy-nilly on the sides for animals to get snared into. Pick it up, take it home with you. And if other anglers leave it, take a picture of it, report it to the club, pick it up and take it home with you.
An excellent checklist of things to be doing there. Thanks, Will. Jack, one from Dennis. What camera kit would you recommend for an amateur who's looking to start some underwater photography or video recording?
I guess it's whatever you can afford, because underwater filming isn't cheap, unfortunately. GoPros are really good. I still use GoPros quite a bit. I think probably the best like affordable cameras that offer a little bit of everything is Olympus do a series of cameras called TG Tufts. They're a good fishing camera as well, actually, because you can drop them, they're waterproof, they can get dirt on them, you can bash them, and they're tough as old boots. But they're actually not too bad for kind of getting underwater shots and video and whatever. I can't remember how much they are, maybe like 300 or 400 quid, which for an underwater camera, that's about, you're not going to get, you can get cheaper ones, but the quality is potato. So you're going to have to look around that bracket. But yeah, TG Tough, Olympus, I would recommend. Have a look at those.
Real thanks. And one final one. Any thoughts on both of you collaborating on a series for web or TV? I can tell you now the Rivers Trust would be up for it. That sounds great. I would love to see the both of you doing more stuff together.
It'd be good. I'd love to. We were going to go fishing a few months ago, weren't we? I think was it you had writing deadlines, wasn't it, Will?
I did. Oh, yeah. I was gutted. Yeah. I would absolutely love to work with Jack. I think he's amazing. I think everything he does is brilliant. He's such a great ambassador for fishing and the Rivers Trust. So I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. If any commissioners are listening to this, sort it out. But yeah, no, it would be, I'd love to. Yeah, I'm sure we will. We'll need to go fishing again. Or start at some point anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, lovely. Brilliant. Well, thank you both so much for such an insightful and fascinating conversation. Jack, we love you. You're our ambassador. Thank you for banging the drum of the Rivers Trust as well. Will, thank you so much for joining us, for being such an excellent host and steering such a lovely conversation. And thank you all of you who spent a little bit of your evening to join us for this chat. We will round that off now, but one final plug, as is my job, just to remind you, if you were remotely interested in supporting our work at the Rivers Trust, please do click the link in the chat or head over to any of our socials to find it, to support us through the big give, where any of your donations are doubled. And one final thing, perhaps, maybe I've said the word final several times now, but if you like Jack's photography, he very kindly donated some really cool prizes to a giveaway that we're doing on our Instagram at the moment. So, you know, perfect for the angler in your life. For Christmas, perhaps, you can be in with a chance of winning a British fish calendar, some playing cards and some greetings cards, some excellent goodies, courtesy of lovely Jack Perks. So do head on over to our Instagram as well. Jack, where can people find more from you?
I'm useless at plugging myself. I guess my website's probably the easiest thing because everything kind of springs out from that. So if you go to jackperksphotography.com, it's got links to all the other things that I get up to and socials and whatnot. So that's probably your best bet.
Lovely. And Will?
willmillard.com, and then on all the socials, just search for my name or @MillardWill on Twitter.
Smashing. Thank you both. Thanks very much. And thanks everyone for attending. We hope we'll see you at one of our events again soon. Enjoy your evening.
Thanks.